Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, Rays, and today I'm going to be breaking down Paladin Cecil as well as the 2 new vision cards and the new summon type banners for you. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. If you're interested in Kane and Rosa will be probably revealed more information next Thursday in Japan and will be released on next Saturday in Japan. Okay, alright, with that being said, taking a look at the new banners. So first of all, there's a couple of step-ups. There is a 5 step-up. This we've seen twice now. What's interesting is if you get to the very end of it, it guarantees you the UR summon, and it is free Lapis all the way up with some extra bonuses too. I'm not opposed to this because it allows you to get the vision card. I do wish, though, as you went up, even maybe at step 3, it guaranteed you the MR/SSR one, just because I feel like those are way too difficult to get. Now, with that being said, real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to the 2 new vision cards. The first one, Calm Moment, which is just, I really like this. I think it's an absolute beautiful piece of artwork, and it's stats, HP, and ice defense, as well as individual piercing. Just really nicely statted card. Second card is the Chocobo card, which comes with the Chocobo summon. Not only is it party quickness up, which I think is really valuable, but Chocobo summon himself is something that I would say is just a really good summon. Not only does it restore HP, but it gives buffs to the entire party of defense, agility, and HP with dispelling, poison, blind, paralysis, confusion, and stun. Wow, what a summon. Really think that this is a incredibly top tier summon, and more than anything, I definitely want this card. So there you go. I just found it interesting. And now, as for Paladin Cecil, you have 3 ways to go about getting him if you do want him. First of all, and around for 25 days is his own banner, which does have the pity rate on it, the pity timer on it, just like we saw with the Luasa banner. This might be an indication that this is going to become more normal. Second is a cheaper step up, but no guarantees of basically anything outside of an SSR. Best of luck to you. And our 3-step paid Lapis banner, which gives you 2 guaranteed either UR characters or vision cards in some combination. And step 3, guaranteeing you a Paladin Cecil. So if you want the character, very easy, providing that you are willing to get some paid Lapis. Now, with that being said, I'm going to be talking about Paladin Cecil. So, going to preface this with a little bit of a notice. Overall, I am unhappy with Paladin Cecil, how he turned out. I do think that there are good things about him, and I will talk about those good things, but if you're really expecting me to be shoot the moon over the hill, happy with this kind of stuff, yeah, no. You might want to sit this one out. Okay. So, talking about this character overall, first of all, let's go right into one of the things that I think is really strong, his TMR. His TMR is very strong indeed, 362 HP, 42 attack, 6 defense, and 12 critical. Not only that, but its ability when maxed out gives a buff AoE in a diamond style pattern. I'll just bring that up real quick. 30% to attack, 30% to magic, and 10 bravery maxed out when the ability is maxed out for 3 turns. I think that this is a incredibly powerful ability that can just benefit the entire team. So I think that is really, really strong. And overall, I think the TMR is just pretty nicely statted overall for an accessory overall. So yeah, now let's talk about Paladin Cecil, and let's take a look at that cool limit burst, because these are always fun, right? And I'm certain that there are a ton of Final Fantasy IV fans who are very much looking forward to this character ending up in the game. So there he is, there's the limit burst. Now let's get into his kit. And overall, one of my biggest problems with him is stat-wise. His HP is definitely not bad. Maxed out, it'll be around 5,000 without any vision cards, and that's pretty darn good. I think that's a high amount of HP. Looking at his attack as well, his attack is, I think, 12th overall in the entire game. Don't quote me on that. That was Altima's detail, not mine. But should be pretty accurate. Round 12, he is in the higher echelon in terms of damage dealers out there. Also looking at the rest of his kit, the biggest problem that I do have is agility. His agility is absolutely awful. Quickness can be much better, but yeah, agility, there's almost no nice way of saying that it is just poopy. Looking at his passives, passives overall kind of conflict. First of all, the monk one is almost completely worthless, seeing that it is strike damage up, and he is more of a sword slash character, which just, this is always going to be the problem I feel with monks until we get a really decent just monk strike character. Regardless, continuing on, he also has a soldier passive, which gives him a 60% attack boost, but it doesn't decrease his resistance to a bunch of types of damage, you know, basically everything. And this goes incredibly against the idea that he is a tank. The fact that even Gummy was describing him on screen on the live stream as a tank is kind of hilarious, because this works very much in the opposite direction. His other two passives are basically HP and defense, but looking overall at his skill tree board, he has no defense and no spirit to speak of either. It is almost shockingly bad. Or I do think he has like 2 defense, but it is not enough to be any kind of good. I think overall, just really disappointing for a tank to have no defense and no spirit in his entire like range of the skill tree. If you consider just like how good Warrior of Light is on both defense and spirit, this is embarrassing, and I would not call him a tank. Also looking at his counter abilities, 2 of his counters are the exact same, except one is slash and one is strike. So both of those are basically out. The last one that he has for his main job is a chance to counter physical damage and reduce the damage taken. It does reduce the damage up to 45%, but yeah, it's hard to say that that's also not a little bit disappointing. Looking at his main job, interesting thing that he does have a damage attack that does increase his agility by 25%, but it has no range to it. It is literally 1 square ahead of him, which is just awful. Like, you want to be able to access agility, to have faster turns right from the get-go, and that is a real problem. He does have a way to inflict disable, but again, it's basically right up close and it has no range on it. He does have an increase of his own defense and spirit by 12 for each for 3 turns, as well as increasing spirit debuff resistance, but we'll get into why that's a problem in just a second. He has consume 25% of his own HP, 25%, to reduce damage taken by 50% for 3 turns. Now this is an AoE attack, and this is one of his much better abilities. Sacrificing his own HP to potentially remove damage from 5 characters is much better, and is actually a really strong ability that makes his kit kind of good, because he does have a lot of HP that he can sacrifice. It's not bad, but in terms of like a paladin ability, kind of weird. Moving on, last but not least, he does have a pretty big AoE damage nuke in the plus style pattern of 200% damage that also decreases enemies' attack by 40% for 3 turns. If it was also magic, I think this ability would be easily the strongest, but it's just kind of eh. He has also in his kit under the sub-job of Paladin 3 abilities, restore 20% for 3 turns, so some basic regen, which is really good. He has a damage attack that also increases Reaper Killer, so he has natural advantage against Reapers, and he can consume 25% of his own HP to reduce the damage taken multiple turns. But this one is for magic, and it is not AoE. So a couple of things to really note before we get into the damage portion of his kit. No hate generation. This is by far the biggest problem I have with him. He is not a tank. It feels like a joke to call him a tank, because while he can do support, he cannot do anything remotely tanky short of breaking attack. And for that reason, as a tank, I just can't even consider him that. Don't call him a tank, because he's not a tank. And I think that is an incredibly disappointing part of his kit. And I think that Gummy basically lied about it on stream. Because yeah, just with the way that hate changes have been and how good Warrior of Light is at, and even Rain too as well, is at maintaining hate generation over, battles, this just doesn't feel good. Second thing to note, while he can reduce the amount of damage, sacrificing his own HP just doesn't feel incredibly in line with a Paladin, and his agility buff is just absolutely awful. Taking a look at it overall, I'm kind of shocked that this is what we're looking at. With his defense buff and his spirit buff, he might end up being okay, but you're relying entirely on equipment or vision cards to give him the defensive or spirit stat. Continuing on into his soldier class, he does have both the ability for absorbing TP. He can consume his own 10% of his own HP to give him the 50% attack boost, but let's just get into the really big problem here. He doesn't have Drain Force. Unfortunately, I guess that would have been too strong, but it really makes just the rest of what we're going to talk about here just meh. He does have Hazard Slash, which is of course a really powerful damage attack, and obviously one of the strengths of his kit is that he has so much HP that, well, basically you have the liberty to sacrifice HP, unlike someone like Stern, where it's probably going to get him killed. But not having Drain Force feels like kind of a little bit of a missed opportunity on two things. One, making him an incredibly good damage dealer, for one reason that I'm going to talk about very shortly. And secondly, just because of he did used to be a Dark Knight. It would have been cool to have him have a Drain HP, even if it wasn't as strong as other Drains. Either way, Howlet does have a kind of deal damage and drain that can deal up to 3,000 points of damage, so I don't necessarily see the problem here, and it just ends up being disappointing. But the other major disappointing part of the soldier kit is he has no defense penetration. For a DPS right now to have no defense or spirit penetration feels just incredibly dated already. Maybe it will be wrong. Maybe he can just deal a mass amount of damage, but I'm not seeing it. So moving on. Last thing to note is his monk abilities, which he basically has a little bit of piercing in there, but it is strike damage, which kind of works against it, and like the rest of his kit, which is slash, so I'm not particularly convinced here, and strike just doesn't have good support yet. The one thing that I do like in that part of his kit is the Dispel, Poison, Blind, Sleep, Silence, Petrify, Toad, and Disable and Immobilize, but he doesn't even have, at least at this point, there's nothing on WOTV Calc that has him having any kind of HP regen here, so Monk feels also like a wasted amount, just giving him extra HP. And his Limit Burst has a 67% chance to stun for one turn, but that also feels pretty bad. And looking at his skill tree overall, there is a lot of critical on there, there's luck, and the other thing that I note very quickly is the fact that his level 4 skill is Dexterity up, which feels underwhelming to say the least. Overall, I just don't know what the hell happened with Paladin Cecil in the design sphere. He doesn't feel like a tank. Too much of his kit works against that. No hate generation, not enough defense or spirit on the skill tree, and last but not least, his soldier passive, which you want to run because it gives you, more attack power, just isn't there. Looking at a DPS, missing kind of defense penetration at this point feels just really bad too. Overall, Paladin Cecil feels like a DPS bruiser. He has a lot of HP to take some hits and use that to boost the rest of the party, but overall it feels pretty lackluster, and I'm just not seeing the value out of this. The only unit that I can kind of make a comparison to is Ramza overall. I consider this character to be very much like Ramza, but on a defensive side instead of an offensive side, and this is the part though that separates those two characters. Paladin Cecil has a really bad level of agility, where Ramza has a really good level of agility. Meaning that Ramza can take advantage of that at the beginning of battle and just buff, where here it feels like a whole bunch of characters are going to have to pass multiple turns waiting for Cecil to get into gear so that he can use the defense buff. Alright, so overall I've talked about the weaknesses. Let me talk one more time about one thing that I do think is the ending point that I want to end on in terms of why this character might still be good in the future. And I say might because I feel pretty certain about this. I do think that his AoE defensive buffs are potentially more beneficial than a hate generating character. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, based on recent enemies here on the JP side, a lot of enemies just hit you AoE. Looking at Fenrir was so fast and so good at hitting AoE with status buffs or status effects that it was just really, really frustrating to fight him. It felt very much like tanks were already hate generators were already becoming obsolete because of the fact that the enemy just ran in and AoE'd you. And this is a continuing trend. Ifrit had big AoEs. The Twin-Headed Dragon had counter AoEs. And Demon Wall, the newest fight here on JP side, guess what? Has AoEs. So it might actually be that an overall defensive buff is just better than hate generation. And that is probably my big point here as to why Cecil might even be a little bit better than I'm giving him credit for. Overall, his kit does feel lackluster in terms of what I was advertised as. Both sides seem to be countering against each other instead of at the point in the story of Final Fantasy IV where by the time he becomes a paladin, he is supposed to be more at peace with himself. Therefore, his kit should probably work overall better. But I do think, given the direction that WOTV's challenges seem to be going, a overall defensive buff to multiple characters might be better than what I am giving it credit for and what other people might give credit for too. So I know I've talked a lot of bad stuff about him, but again, I really need to stake my claim that I do think that there could be just a really good brawler here that can take a lot of DPS from your enemy, get in close, or just AoE nuke them from orbit from a distance. There is some good stuff here. And I do think that the support skill that gives a lot of defense to an entire team in a big AoE style rather than just hate generation might be even better than people are going to give it credit for. So there you go. That's my impressions on Paladin Cecil, an incredibly mixed bag in the end, where unbelievably easy unit to get, and I can see some really good advantages there, but I can also see some critical flaws that are making me wonder why he got a guaranteed banner. Because it's bait. Anyway, it definitely would not be the worst idea, given the fact that the step-up banner for Cecil is around for 25 days, to wait a while and just go for it once we have the Kain and Rosa details, who will probably have their own banners. Or they will have their own banners, but their own step-up banners as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Let me know what you think of Cecil in the comments below, because I'm still processing this. Anyway, thank you. Take care.